Thank you very much. I think everybody's taking a little bit of a deep breath after your comments and shuffling in their seats. I was looking forward to this session because it was the first session actually we touched on 5 years ago when we started the first UAE Energy Forum, and in that regard it gives me great pleasure to introduce the alumni of that session, Mr. Rashed Al-Jarwan, Executive Director of Dana Gas, to please join us on the stage, who has also had a long distinguished career in the UAE energy industry, many years in ADNOC, and also Fadl, now Executive Director of Dana Gas, operating as an independent Arab energy company across the region, including in Egypt and Kurdistan. The next guest I'd like to welcome to the stage is also of the region, Dr. Ali Mahdi Aldabbagh, who is the General Secretary for the Iraqi Intellectual Group and the former State Minister and official spokesman of the Iraqi government. I'd like to also welcome him to the stage, who was in government in Iraq when most of the choreography of the current contracts that were delivered there were presented, and so welcome and thank you very much. And finally, I would like to welcome Mr. Sean Korney to the stage, who is a partner with Baker Botts, one of the world's leading energy law firms, to join us in this conversation. I'd like to just start with also reminding us of one slide. I know that Rashid also had a slide that was from his 50-50, and we have the slide from the voting this morning vis-a-vis what might be the group, the partnerships of 2020, and clearly the NOC IOC came out quite on top at 49%. But in addressing the points that you made, 49 means that 51% voted for something else, although a range of things. And I thought it was what I took most note of, amongst other, is that 18% went with international energy service companies. And I know there isn't 18% of the audience are of the service company sector. So it would seem that that's kind of a strong position. But I would like to begin by asking Rashed Al-Jarwan, Executive Director of Dana Gas, what you think of the comments that were first made from the podium and what the outlook will be vis-a-vis these new partnerships, what they may look like. Do you expect to be drilling oil in Abu Dhabi within 5 years? No. Start with an easier question.
Inshallah. Well, Sean, thank you very much for the panel, and ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here and share with this distinguished panel. First of all, I think it's difficult to put boundaries of, this is one of the points I would like to start with by disagreeing, is to put boundaries between national oil companies, international, and independents. For one reason, personally, I have spent 28 years with ADNOC, then moved on to the private sector, and I've been working for the last 8 years with Dana Gas. And while working with ADNOC, it was a mix of the national oil company and the IOCs. I've had great and fond memories of my working relationship with ADNOC and the Shells and the BPs. So really what once becomes a national oil company, with time also it transforms. BP and Total were national oil companies before they moved. So putting boundaries is one comment I would like to make.
On that, when you say boundaries, do you mean definitions?
Yeah, I mean to say who is who, to segment the company. Having said that, though it is true that the independents or the private sector energy companies, oil and gas, have really in the past decade or so played an important role in the energy sector. And as far as production, percentage of how much actually production they have in capacity, as well as in reserve. I can talk about our own company, Dana Gas, which was only formed in 2005. And now Dana Gas alone produces about 60,000 barrel oil per day equivalent. Maybe that's a small number for the nationals and the IOCs, but by no means it's small for us.
But it does bring up the point, which I think is the opportunity for independent Arab energy companies, or for INOCs for that matter, going into other markets, perhaps the opportunity to develop the smaller space, the smaller marginal field that maybe the bigger players do not have the economics or the appetite for. Do you see that opening more in the region?
I think it is opening indeed. I mean, we've seen countries, for example, such as Egypt, where they are offering a lot of their licensing rounds, and many of the independent private sectors are actually taking good share of the exploration and production. When I say Egypt, it's not just since the revolution, but really for the last decade we're talking, where the independent private sector have contributed to the fact that the gas reserve, for example, that we in Dana Gas are focused on, has reached a level of 77 TCF because of the government's incentivizing private sector as well as the international or any other major player who would like. There are other examples, and I think I should start also by the Kurdistan region of Iraq, where because of the risk and the challenges, this is another reason why the independence of the private sector really can contribute to the industry, not only by taking marginal fields, but also going into areas that are considered risky for sometimes, where financing, for example, was not possible to get from the banks, where majors have hesitated to enter, and the national oil companies are prevented by the politics, for example. So there are tremendous opportunities for the private sector independents to fill in the gap for the field size, but as well as where the opportunities and the risks lie.
Dr. Aldabbagh, when Iraq was taking on its tender period and awarded a number of contracts, it obviously had a lot of the major players, but some Chinese national oil companies as well. Is there appetite, do you think? Obviously, we're seeing things change a little bit in Iraq vis-a-vis the appetite of the international companies to the deals that were offered or signed. Is that changing the view at all, do you think, in Iraq for looking for alternative partners? Do other players, other national oil companies from Asia have an opportunity for more there? Do smaller players, do you think, like we've seen in Kurdistan?
Yes, well, the model of Kurdistan is totally different from what we had from the bid rounds in Baghdad. Just blindly, the bid rounds deal with the figures, not dealing with politics as Kurdistan deal. Kurdistan, when they decide to have the concessions for different companies like Dana Gas or the others, the politics has been influenced their decision. You could see that some of the Turkish companies, which they've been not qualified even in Baghdad, that they've been allowed to work in Kurdistan, because Kurdistan finally found that Turkey is very important partner for them, and again, it is a corridor for their export and for having what is going on right now, which is against the will and the interest of Baghdad's government. So politics is mainly. The same applicable for Dana Gas. Dana Gas not allowed to enter the bid round because of politics again, because Dana Gas had participated in Kurdistan, so it's been penalized that it's not allowed to have. So again, I could take that the politics is the main factor dominating the things in Iraq. But regarding the bid rounds, totally, Shahristani, he deal with the bid round as a blind figure. That is what you could find, that the Chinese got the biggest share because they are more competitive compared with the other major players.
Do you think moving forward, as Exxon has offloaded their stake, or part of their stake there went to the Chinese, that Iraq is comfortable, sees a successful future, even if all of its partners are INOCs coming from Asia or anywhere else? Do international national oil companies offer the technical competence to deliver what Iraq or any other producer might be seeking?
Yeah, I think Iraq had succeeded at the end. There are many radical opinions against the first bid round and the second, but at the end now, I mean, Iraq satisfied, and Iraq even got most of the oil fields, which again, there is a question in Iraq with the government, within the government, that why we did sign 13 contracts, while what we are going to do with that production. So again, one more problem with the major oil companies, that the plateau level, how could be delivered, how could be accepted by the Iraqi government, how could be committed from the Iraqi government. Again, all this make finally that Iraq at the end now succeeded in that one. Again, now we do understand that the problem, as I didn't answer for the Kurdistan again, the problem with Kurdistan is influencing the whole decision of the government. Sooner or later, just as, if you allow me, that the question which you had for Mr. Hassan, what he had raised, I think Turkey couldn't do this if the situation in Baghdad not as it is right now, definitely. Because Turkey, again, the gas and oil should flow. This theory, what Mr. Hassan said, we agreed on it, but again, because of the politics, Turkey had allowed Kurdistan to do. If the situation with Baghdad was not as it is now, definitely Turkey will not allow Kurdistan to flow the gas.
Let me bring Sean in. So in terms of the you could identify Kurdistan, not to get into the weeds of the politics, but in terms of it being the one area in the region where there is clearly active opportunity for smaller players, for international national oil companies, you want to call them that. We've got Dana Gas there, we've Mubadala Petroleum looking there, we've TAQA looking there. Does that model, can that replicate itself in other parts of the region, or do you think Kurdistan is unique for whatever reasons, and that smaller players, INOC players, won't have opportunity in the southern Gulf, let's say?
Well, I think the Kurdistan region is unique because it was it sat unexplored or sat unexploited for such a long time, and then it had a system where wildcatters or smaller companies went in, and we've seen an evolution of that where bigger companies are coming in and buying up some of the smaller companies. So I think the first answer is yes, it is unique, but I think that you can have that situation elsewhere in the Gulf. You know, if the governments open up additional acreage that are attractive to smaller companies that aren't attractive to larger companies, as we've been talking about, then there's nothing preventing, you know, some of the people with an entrepreneurial spirit, the Dana Gases and the like, and even smaller ones, people who have split off from a career at ADNOC and want to try something on their own. I mean, we talked about that earlier. So if there's opportunity there for someone who fits a different part of the strata of the food chain, then I think people will move into that.
Well, Rashid, you made a pretty strong, bold statement in your opening remarks. If the IOCs have a limited opportunity here in whatever sense of time frame you would put on that, who is going to deliver the technical and to deliver the production capacity ambitions of the region in partnership, of course, with the NOCs? But who is the? You mentioned the customers, China, Korea, and so on. What's your vision? What do you think that will play out?
You know, already the regions have invested heavily and already in production now. I mean, I don't think this will necessarily need, the international oil company to be participating with this. But this doesn't mean that they cannot participate. What I meant to say, for the past 50 years and so on, the international companies, they acted like, they take things for granted. And they have to change their attitude and change to the partnership spirit that is need to be put there. where some benefit comes not only in the region from one side, but also from the outside, from the customer side, from their network, from their infrastructure. That is, was not put forward. Only, I think, Occidental, if I can name it, have done so with Mubadala, where they have taken them to Bahrain and also to Oman and so on. So that is, but Occidental, they were not involved in Abu Dhabi for many years. Okay, maybe they have done it because they want to have a place for themselves, and that is that's of course is normal, is natural. That is, people, they have to do whatever necessary for them to participate in a vast, and very, very important, oil reserves country. But we have seen that is, in Oman, let's say, for instance. In Oman, the government have decided to take small fields from BDO to put it into auctions for smaller companies. Why they have done so? Because the smaller companies are more active, more responsible, and they don't have this. This is small, this is big. Whatever the opportunities for the entrepreneurs, and there is benefit for them, they will come forward and invest the money, and they will do it, and they will do it faster. And as I said before, that is, the international oil companies, they don't have technologies. What they have their names, Coca-Cola names, they have it. Okay, no, really, seriously. And they have the muscle, the financial muscles, and they have the infrastructure, and above all of this, they have the government, the political government behind them. So these, the four.
And they have also the legacy and reputation of having delivered. I mean, they have delivered.
I agree with that.
On a production level, not only here but all over the world.
Yes,
It's not just Coca-Cola.
That is true. They have delivered, and they will deliver. I'm not saying that they will never deliver, but what I'm saying, they have to change their way that they are doing business, because the world is changing.
One might say, I mean, and I'd like to open up to the floor for some questions. There's microphones there, but one might say that that's probably, Rashed, everywhere, that the new partnerships of the future, the knowledge transfer, and all the qualities that go with it. That I'm looking at Mubadala Petroleum table there, and the youth of that table, obviously the future in so many ways. But the partnerships that they will seek in their generation and their journey may be different, do you think, and what they would expect than the journey that he's highlighting, Rashid's highlighting?
I mean, if you look at the strengths and weaknesses of, again, those delineated categories, which I refuse to delineate them, but
are you indicating, I say that we're moving beyond definition now?
I believe so. But I mean, governments, for the sake of the names of national oil companies, they have a lot of responsibilities. Of course, their strength is financial strength, but also they have a lot of responsibilities to the society. For example, you have the support. Anyway, they have first of all corporate social responsibilities, which sometimes prevent them from also acting as fast as the private sector. So here, where's the element of the private sector? Subsidy is another big issue, is not only in social or ex-social governments. I mean, for example, Egypt, the government is highly subsidizing energy, food, etc. But also subsidy is also common in countries such as the UAE, for example. If you go to the petrol station.
Common in America with agriculture.
And so governments have their own responsibilities, and sometimes these responsibilities prevent them from really being that efficient, nimble, effective organization to develop their own resources. Now, I'm not saying that that is bad, but these are the facts. So future partnerships, I think will continue to be a mix of all the prevailing industry players.
You wanted in this vote all of the above. You wanted to. You wanted number 6. All of the above.
I want all of the above and include Dana Gas.
Of course,
the
number
private
7.
sector.
Dana Gas and all of the above. I'd like to go to the floor for some questions, and as people think about what their question might be, I'd like to bring up a polling question from this session to give everybody a chance to express their views on this topic before we go to the floor for questions. So if we could bring up the first question here, which is sort of a spin on what we've been talking about and was touched on earlier. Increasingly NOCs, and please vote whenever you like, the voting will be open. NOCs are exploring new partnerships from the classic IOC, such as other NOCs or independent energy companies, or even in some cases, such as Mexico, with oil service companies. And perhaps in Mexico, we've seen probably the most radical opening up of any national government and opportunity in many decades in recent weeks with the change of the constitution there. Is this a trend that marks the beginning of the end of the IOC's leadership role as we know it? Yes, the end is nigh. 2, can we bring up the countdown so people click away? No, IOC super majors will rebound and dominate the next energy wave. NOC likely to be the dominant partnership of the future. Biggest change over the next 5 years will be energy service companies playing an increasing role as the primary partner. All you can say for sure is everything is changing and the destination is unclear. Okay, so that brings...
That's much almost all of the above.
All of the above, but inevitably people have made some choices, and number 1 is clearly not the case. Will rebound, super majors will rebound. Number 4 got the biggest vote. Number 5, biggest change over the next 5 years will be energy service companies. That's popping up again, as it did earlier. And the last, number 5, all you can say is for sure is that everything is uncertain. What's your own view on energy services companies playing? You mentioned that they're the place in which all the technology is currently anchored. Do they have that kind of future?
Of course, it depends on the model that is, a country they wants to adapt. In Mexico, maybe one reason is they want to be independent and they want to make sure that is, they give, the service companies a chance of really competing. And that's doable, actually, is being done in many areas. That is, you outsource, let's say, your drilling. You can outsource it to a different company that do it. Maintenance, you can outsource it. We have our friend there, NBCC, they are doing a lot of, say, building here and so on. This is also, it used to be done only by the international oil company before. But now, let's say a company like in Abu Dhabi exists here. They do huge projects everywhere here. Petrofac, they can do a lot of jobs and so on. If you go from the engineering to the drilling or to the nutty things are all serviced by entrepreneurs, by companies, not by the international companies. What I want to say, 1 minute,
just looking out for any hands that might go up, so please do put up your hand. Yeah, Andrew in the middle. Just finish your point. We have a microphone in the middle table, shell table.
Yes. Yes.
You're going to finish your point?
No, no, it's okay. I'm fine.
Yeah.
What I see here, we are in the region. We are only oil producer country, and we have to protect our share in the market. To do that, it is with the international oil company to do that. It is with the customers, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Indian, or the Koreans. That's our right. we have to exercise our own future for ourselves.
You're indicating indirectly that
We-
you're not doing enough with your customers at the moment.
Yes, exactly. Our customers, they have the rights also. They are a stakeholder here with us. Where we are getting our money from whom? From the Japanese, from the Chinese, from the Koreans, from the Indians. These are our customers. Our customers, then we have to have a model with them where they should know what we are doing in our own country, and they are partners with us here. They know exactly what the problem that they are facing. Because let's say Japan, for instance, for them, security of oil is the most important part. It's not the price. We have seen this. So security for them is very important, and we have to give them this.
Please, Andrew, if you'd like to just introduce yourself.
Is this on? Yeah. At the risk of sounding defensive, sorry, my name is Andrew Vaughan with Shell here in Abu Dhabi. And I guess what I'm going to say, you would say, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But I have to take issue with the fact that I believe the IOCs do have a huge role to play in the future, just as they've had a huge role to play in the past. I think the contribution that the IOCs and the independents have made to the development of national oil companies has been enormous. We've just completed a 75-year history with ADCO, and I don't think ADCO will be where they are today were it not for the contribution that our companies made decades ago in their development. But I think there's also a huge future, and I think particularly about technology. Technology is not just about transferring technology from A to B. It's about how you apply the technology. We are probably the biggest, as Shell, the biggest researcher and developer of new technologies in the business. I think that was certainly the case a few years ago, and I'm pretty certain it's the case today. And then taking that technology and applying it is what makes the difference. It's what helped us to build the Pearl GTL plant in Qatar. It's what helping us now to help Petroleum Development Oman to develop their enhanced oil recovery fields in Oman. Massive change over the last 10 years. And so, yes, we have a massive contribution to make alongside the independents and alongside the NOCs. For the record, I voted 2, by the way. I suppose I would have to. But I could equally have voted 5. We don't know what the future is going to look like. It's going to be enormously challenging, but I think we all have a role to play, be it the application of technology or the development of expertise or the transfer of knowledge. So I take issue with the idea that somehow we're history. I don't believe we are.
And I think the voting would support your view. Could I just ask you to comment on the other point Rashed was making in terms of that the definitions between the main stakeholders, if you like, is blurring now, and as you say, the number 5 would indicate everything's changing. Do you think there's view in that?
I think there's a lot of merit in that. I mean, if I look at ADNOC today and the ADNOC that I first knew when I encountered them back in 1997, it's an enormously different company, behaves in an enormously different way. It's grown over the years, and I think those boundaries are blurring. I've worked for an independent as well as for a major, and the independents turn into majors in their own way over time. So yes, I think it's a good thing that blurring takes place, because it really is about integration, collaboration, and development of a new industry. And I'm quite excited about 5, actually. I think that's a
Sean,
good
could I
thing.
bring you in terms of the new contracts and new partnerships, if you like, vis-a-vis the point that Rashed is making, that in there, that there has to be more value exchange embedded in on a contractual basis rather than just on a CSR basis, but the actual development of young national capacity and other things like that. Are you seeing that in that space, or the indication that needs to be there more?
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 things that go to this partnership point, in that your best partner, or the partner that comes out as sort of being the leading partner for any project that you're going in. I think you have to look at what is the asset that's on offer, what are the terms that are on offer, and what are the additional asks from either the host government or the national oil company. So if the national oil company is asking for technology, you're naturally going to prefer a company, whether it's an IOC or an INOC or a service company, that has superior technology. If you're asking for different things, you're asking for the cheapest thing, you might find someone who's not invested as much in R&D, so they can deliver at a lower price, but they're not adding sort of different values. So I think what you're asking for determines who your partners are, and as to the different types of partnerships going forward, there's been a lot of different comments here, but I think you'll see that there'll be some successful partnerships between the NOCs and their customers. You'll see, we heard of in the past, Chinese companies going into Saudi Arabia and then having a reciprocal invitation to participate in a refinery in China. So you'll see that those sorts of buyer and seller sort of relationships. You'll see, someone mentioned Mubadala, but there's others as well where an IOC comes in and makes a big investment into a country in the Gulf and then expects that the host government's INOC expects to get invited to participate in a project somewhere else. And we're seeing more and more of that. So there's different sort of partnerships evolving of different types. And I think that will continue to happen.
Please. At the front here, could we bring a microphone, please? Yes,
I
Doctor.
think this is all related to whether it is a conventional or unconventional source. For the conventional, I think there is a great chance for the NOCs to come, as you could take a model as ADNOC or now even Iraqi partnership with the IOCs could qualify them that to have a lead, at least in Iraq, that for the conventional source. For unconventional source, definitely I do agree that the IOCs still have the lead on the industry.
What is the view in Baghdad, or the impact that the likes of Exxon were looking to move away from their opportunity there, and one or two others? How is that being viewed?
Well, I think it's been treated as a sort of failure.
The
policy, failure of the policy for the oil, as there is no credible policy and plan for what is the future. So that you could see.
So failure from the Iraqi government side.
Yes, not from the Ministry of Oil, not only on Exxon. Even you could find Gazprom had the same. Look, Oil had difficulties. Eni got the same difficulties. But finally, some of them being fixed, because at the end, if Exxon and the others want to move, it was Iraqi government request from Exxon to stay. And they reconsider the way which they were speaking, or the Ministry of Oil, that they want to punish Exxon because they want to blacklist it, then finally found that this is not the right policy. So again, it's been looked as it is not a good policy being followed in dealing with the IOCs.
So the Iraqi government needs to improve their policy.
Yes.
Their win-win, as was mentioned earlier, perhaps. The front, please, James.
Sean, I think picking up on the point which Sean makes, where he sort of says, the partnerships will come from different places. What we're increasingly seeing now, I think, is that partnership and collaboration is being defined by access to a very specific need or technical capability. We heard this morning from Martin about the partnership that's driven for Wintershall off the back of their capability in sour gas. If I look to Richard behind me, Maersk, having built an incredible capability in the area of horizontal drilling, for instance, in EOR. You look at Statoil, who have very, very capably specialized in enhanced recoverability from their reservoirs. These are all issues that are affecting national governments around the world. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a big driver for partnership was access to capital. That's not the same today as it used to be. So Rashid is also correct. I think what we're seeing is a real blurring of the boundaries as we move through the sort of like the 90s and into this last decade, where there was a huge dispersion of talent that moved out from the super majors and out into the independent sector, out into the national oil companies. And what we're seeing today is the product of that, where host governments, where national oil companies, where independent oil companies are looking to exploit their specific areas of technical expertise to see where they can enter into areas of collaboration. And I think that's what the feature that we're predominantly seeing here in the Middle East.
Thank you for your comment. We have a question here in the front, please.
Yes, thanks. Robin Mills from Manar Energy Consulting. I was just thinking from the discussion this morning, obviously if we look at the US shale gas and shale oil revolution, it was very much led by small entrepreneurial independent companies, and the super majors have relatively got into that game rather late. Does the panel think that given that many countries in this region are short of gas, that we could see a similar revolution in this part of the world to meet this region's gas needs? And if so, what would need to happen in order for small entrepreneurial companies like Dana Gas or others to lead that kind of a revolution?
Rashid, would you mind addressing that? I mean, you create opportunity and they will come, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a real question, because in the US it's completely different. But here it's, you know, the oil or the gas reservoirs that we have is really challenging reservoirs. And you know, in my old days, it was very difficult to exploit them because it has a very huge H2S and so on. So they need some kind of really proven management, I can say, that is, you know, to manage these reservoirs and to get the gas out. How we will see the smaller companies placed in Abu Dhabi, I am not in a position to answer that. But I think in the region, we have seen Oman doing it, and they were very successful doing it. We have seen, you know, with Mr. Aldabbagh, also that is, you know, Kurdistan have done it because of political reasons, because they have very small fields and so on, and they need, you know, entrepreneurs, small companies, to play the game, and they have done it successfully, I think.
Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I have a long answer actually.
Well, give us your short one first, and we'll see if it qualifies for extension.
Yeah. No, I mean, just focusing on gas, and this is what distinguishes Dana Gas again from the others. When the company, the vision was set for the company, it was focused on natural gas and focused on the region. The reason being is predicting the fact that there will be a huge demand for energy, for electricity, and the growth in electricity. I have all the numbers, but I'm not gonna
They're clearly big.
bother you with the numbers. So
Yep.
they're huge. So there was a need to focus on natural gas. As Mr. Suwaidi mentioned, in Abu Dhabi 20 years ago, apart from the LNG export, which was pioneered here in Abu Dhabi for the Middle East region, to export LNG to Japan, it was really the wise visionaries of the leadership then. Apart from that offshore export, we used to flare gas on the onshore fields. Then they said, because there was no value for the gas, it used to be a curse to discover gas 20, 30 years ago. Yet, to visualize the fact that the world will demand more gas, and then that is where the independence or the private sector or Dana Gas story to say, let us pick up on something that's definitely needed in the future.
Do you think
and it was focused on exactly natural gas.
The vote on that question number 5 and in your pitch for Dana Gas, do you think do you have in your vision that it's realistic that obviously it's 29% see the destinations unclear, but is it part of that possibility that companies like Dana Gas could position themselves for development opportunity in Abu Dhabi?
Absolutely. I mean, if we take the UAE, for example, Dana Gas now is present by beginning to develop an offshore field on offshore of the Emirates of Sharjah and Ajman called the Zora field. Okay, that's a small field. It was discovered before. They discovered gas in the day when they were looking for oil, and it was abandoned. So the opportunity came for Dana Gas to say, okay, we will develop that gas. We will set a new commercial value for that gas and actually work on that project at the construction stage is already beginning, and hopefully within months we will see the production come from the Zora field. Now that will earmark the presence of the Dana Gas operation within the UAE, and hopefully once you've proven that you've been able to develop in a more complex area as offshore, then it would be easier to come onshore and develop the same.
Is there any reason why, of course you've got to have many competitors, and I see some around the room, the big and the small and everyone in between, but is there any natural advantage that you would position, let's say a domestic energy company would have over another player? There's a mubadala, they're obviously government related, but is there any value added that would brings with your pitch versus company X?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's good to have a healthy competition, but we're also complementing each other, i.e. independents, the bigger ones, the government-owned. But each company will provide its own advantages. For example,
just to address the specific point of being from the country, of the country, listed on the Abu Dhabi Stock Exchange, does that offer any particular value you think in your pitch versus, and I'm not just saying Dana, but I'm saying...
Not in terms of just the preference for the slogan of that this is a company listed in Abu Dhabi or from the UAE. But yes, there is room for it after having proved its capability of, if we are able, of course, Dana Gas with its partners, and we have MOL and OMV and Crescent Petroleum, for example, in Kurdistan, we were able to develop a field and producing today at a level of 300 million standard cubic feet of gas per day, 15,000 barrels of condensate,
so
1,000 tons of
LPG. Is
LPG.
that you have to prove, and as I said, you have to prove your competence. I'd like to just wrap up by borrowing a phrase from Richard, in 30 seconds or less, the easy question of the day, which hasn't really been mentioned at all, is we are in a very uncharted waters, unprecedented, where ADCO concession has expired. The consideration of what the new will be is underway. While it is underway and we can have the chance to look in the crystal ball, I'd like to ask all the panelists what their views is on what that might look like in its renewal. Do you have
who might end up being successful?
Yeah, will it be like it is? Will it be different? As specific as you think you can be or would like to be?
It'll be vastly different. I mean, we've got a whole different sort of universe of people who are interested in this asset now. And I think what you'll end up with is a very different mix of partners, probably chosen very carefully by ADNOC for different reasons. Some might be that they bring a superior technology. Some may be that they bring the market. Some may be that you need to or you'd like to grow a bigger relationship with a particular country that's a consumer. I think that it will be based not just on quantitative things, but also on qualitative things.
I think I agree with the gentleman that is, it will be different. I believe that is, things are changing, and the international company, they need to change their way of, if they were, they were successful, and if they continue their success in Abu Dhabi, they need to change it to a new model that's different than the model they have prevailed in the past.
What would be the principle number one on the list of difference?
Market. Market for me. The market is the most important. This is what we sell. We need a market. If you are selling water, you need people who will buy it from you. Okay. It's very simple.
I don't have anything more to add. I think change is a fact, and things don't repeat themselves in this area. So I would expect, it will be interesting to see what happens, but I would expect things to change.
Could change be money more winners rather than a handful of the previous consortium number, that it could be 10 or 15?
I don't know on the numbers, but the dimensions are definitely different. Market, consumers are important. Who's your long-term partners that have been actually buying your products? Your history of relationship is important. I don't think that can be neglected. Yeah. Newcomers, new partnerships, new decision makers. I think there are a lot of elements that will eventually produce something what I would think different.
Dr. Ali, you have the last word in this session. Obviously, maybe not you to comment on the question specific, but having been through a major concession award in this region, the biggest for some time before this one here, do you have any guidance, wisdom that you could share from that journey, from that renewal, or what's
I think I do agree on the change, which Mr. Suwaidi said, and you could see the model of BP when they were the first one who had agreed on a first bid round. They were hesitating finally, it's a market. Finally, they found that this is the way, and they have to follow the new models, which I don't say that the models is ideal or is being agreed on, whether it is good or not, but finally they found, and it's been followed by INI, it's been followed by the Exxon, it's been followed by others. At the beginning, no one, even Iraqi government, couldn't believe that that model could be workable. And I think we remember, we were in the bid round, the Prime Minister, myself, and the others were there. All of us been disappointed from the way it has been handled. But finally, it's a market. IOC found themselves that they have to follow that model which Iraqi government had been adopted. And so on the second bid round, you could see that some of them, they declined. They didn't participate, but some of them, they come. So it's, again, it's a market formula.
Well, I think a very interesting subject, inevitably, that will be with us for some time. We'll be touching on little elements of it in the after lunch breakout session. We're looking at what new contracts may look like, service contracts, production sharing agreements, whatever the outlook will be. That might be also an interesting conversation. It seems no doubt that whatever it is, that everything, like most business, has to have a win-win framework in order for it to work for everybody. So on that note, I'd like to thank all my panelists for their wise words and insights and for coming today. Thank you very much. Thank you.